64 here, Karnataka Land Revenue Act 1964. So here this is an independent act that is applicable only to the state of Karnataka. Here the preliminary, that is short title, extent and commencement. So here this Karnataka Land Revenue Act 1964 is a state law and it is applicable to Karnataka state. Here the section 1 of the act speaks about short title, extent and commencement. The short title is that Karnataka Land Revenue Act and the extent is the whole state of Karnataka and the commencement is 1964. So this is applicable to the state of Karnataka and it is commenced in 1964 and it can be applicable throughout the state of Karnataka. So here the revenue officers are dealing with the procedure. So here procedure of revenue officers. So here the revenue officers deal with the land disputes and regarding the enquiries, any other thing with the land which is situated in Karnataka, whether it is a urban land or a rural land. Here section 24 speaks about revenue officers has to be revenue court. So here the revenue officers are appointed by the appropriate government, that is the state government of Karnataka appoints the revenue officers. So here the revenue officers like district collectors or district commissioners, assistant commissioners and even tahsildars comes under this revenue officers category. Here the revenue officers, he is not below the rank of tahsildar, and the assistant commissioner and district commissioner will be considered as the revenue officers in the revenue matters, and in their capacity they sit as a judges in their respective office and deal with the cases or disputes come before the office. Here tahsildar enjoys the magistrate power and he solves the disputes come before the tahsildar office and he sits as a judge in the tahsildar office and solve the disputes in the court. And the assistant commissioner, he is also having the jurisdiction in his official capacity and he also sits as a judge to solve the disputes that comes before him. And the district commissioner or district collector also sits as a judge and he is also dealing with the land revenue disputes which comes before his office. So here all the land revenue officers not below the rank of tahsildar and above the rank of tahsildars act as a court in their official capacity. The next thing, section 26, place for holding enquiries or hearing cases. So here the place where the office situated or the direction given by the officer to the subordinate. So according to that, the place which is mentioned in writing, so there this local jurisdiction falls in that particular area where the office can be held. For example, if you take Bangalore is a Bangalore urban and Bangalore rural. We have two types of jurisdiction, and in the Bangalore urban the district commissioner office will be settled in the Bangalore urban, and in the rural, so the office will be in the rural place of Bangalore or rural district of Bangalore, where within the local jurisdiction the case has to be, here case means the dispute, land dispute has to be enquired or decided by this jurisdiction. In that particular place they can hold the enquiry or hearing the case. Holding the enquiry means here the officer can call the disputed parties either it may be between the authority and the landholder, so they can call the person before the authority and they can hear the dispute before the court and they can decide or they can solve the particular problem in that place. Next, section 27 speaks about power to transfer cases. So here the dispute or the cases comes before the revenue officers as a revenue courts. Such cases or disputes may be transferred to any other place from one place. Here from one regional commissioner to any other regional commissioner the cases can be transferred. Here the regional commissioner can make an application or a application received by the regional commissioner. He can transfer the case in the ends of justice with subordinate officers, that is the revenue officers who is competent to deal with the dispute in the same district or in any other district and in any other region. So the dispute can be transferred from one region to another region or within the same district as the regional or commissioner thinks fit. And apart from this, the deputy commissioner may also transfer the case from one class cases arising under this act. So here the revenue subordinate officers, from one revenue subordinate officer to the another subordinate revenue officers, the case can be transferred who is competent to deal the case. And the next thing is that a deputy commissioner may withdraw any case or class of cases arising under this act. So here the case is filed by some person and that is not suitable to deal with the revenue courts. Under such circumstances, the deputy commissioner is having power to remove such cases. Section 28, powers to take evidence, summons persons to give evidence and procedure to produce documents. So here according to section 28, the revenue officer not less than the Tahsildar and assistant director of land records. So each and every officers are having power to collect the evidence and they are having power to give the summons to the persons who are supposed to produce the document into the authority. So here according to section 132 and 133 of the Code of Civil Procedure 1908, according to the prescribed manner, the summons can be issued to the persons who is supposed to give the evidence in the before the authority or in the court. So here when the persons comes before the authority in the revenue courts, they have to make a statement of truth in respect of examined the marks and makes a statement in the court hall, means they have to take the oath in the court hall and they have to produce the document which is required and which is prescribed by the authority, and the person is supposed to produce any type of document. For that a summons can be issued and the summons can be sent to the persons and the person has to attend personally before the revenue court and is supposed to produce the same. So here according to CPC, the authority that is not lower than the rank of Tahsildar having the power to issue the notice or summons to the person, and the same person has to come and appear before the court and they are supposed to provide or produce the document which is mentioned in the summons. Section 29, contents of summons and the manner in which it has to be issued and served. So here the summons should be in handwritten and it should be in a duplicate copy. The original copy will be replaced with the court document, and in the summons the date has to be mentioned and place and time where the person who is required by the court to appear and give the evidence, it should be mentioned clearly, and even the date on which the summons is issued, the place of enquiry, that is the officer's office, like Tahsildar or Assistant Commissioner or even the District Commissioner, and the authority who is issuing the summons, his sign should be there and the office seal should be put in the summons, and that summons has to be sent to the person either through post or personally through the court officials. And while the summons shall be served to the person, to the family, where the adult male member, if he is available, the summons should be served to that person, or if he is not available, even a adult female can receive the summons but not the minors. In other cases where the members are not available in the house, or if the either house or premises, if it is locked or no person is available, under such circumstances the copy of the summons can be pasted on the wall or door or any place which is suitable to paste. So that can be done. And if the in other nature of serving summons, if the person is residing in other district or far from the place of the court, the revenue court, then such summons can be sent through the registered post, and on the accepting the registered post, if the person is signed and received the registered post, then that is considered as prima facie of proof that the summons is served to the person. This is the procedures that should be followed in the content of summons which should be issued to the person. Here very important is that the date on which the summons is issued, it should be sent in the name of the authority who is not lower than the rank of the Tahsildar, and the signature and office seal of the issuing authority should be there, and the content of the summons is under which ground or which law the summons is issued, and the reason for the summons issued, that should be mentioned. What is the nature of dispute, and when the person should appear before the court, that is the time, place, date, everything should be mentioned. Next, section 30 speaks about mode of serving notices. So here under the section 30, mode of serving notices, is that here while serving the notice can be served to the person who is a disputed party directly, or it can be affixed to the place ordinarily the person resides, or to a person agent to the owner of the property. Even the agent is competent to receive the notice or summons. Even sometimes the business takes place. Under such circumstances, either the agent can receive the summons, or it can be affixed on the wall or door of the business places. Even if the person is in the other local jurisdiction, then under such circumstances the summon copy can be sent through registered post to the particular address, either it is the office address or address of the person who is residing. This is the procedure and issuing a summons to the person. Section 31 speaks about procedure for procuring attendance of witnesses. So here, as we discussed, so to procuring the attendance of witnesses, Code of Civil Procedure is followed according to the procedure prescribed in the CPC, that is Code of Civil Procedure. A summons or a notification will be issued to the parties who's necessary to come before the revenue courts and to give the evidence, and necessary documents should be produced. So this is the procedure followed. So here, not lower than the rank of Tahsildar and above the officers can issue a summons or notice in their official capacity. That is the one procedure followed to procuring the attendance of witnesses. Procuring the attendance of witnesses means the persons who is required to give their explanations or truth before the court, they have to brought before the court. To bring them, a formal prescribed summons or notice should be issued from the revenue courts, and the revenue court should follow the CPC to issue the summons. Section 32 speaks about compelling attendance of witnesses and examination of witnesses on commission. Here, as per CPC procedure, once the summons or notice is sent, after accepting the summons or notice, the person or the disputed person or the witness, he should come before the authority on that particular day, and is supposed to take oath, and he has to give the explanation whatever the questions put by the court. If it is not done, after receiving the summons, if the person fails to come before the court or is absent on that particular day when he is supposed to be in the court, and is intentionally keep on doing the same thing without attending the court proceedings, and at such time, according to section 32, he can be compelled to come to the court. Compel means here he can be forced to come to the court. Under subsection 1, the officer can issue a bailable warrant of arrest. So here the bailable warrant of arrest can be issued by the authority. So the police person can arrest the person and bring before the court. After taking the evidence, after taking oath, so he can be released on bailable. This is a bailable arrest. So if the person is voluntarily not coming to the court, then the person should be arrested and brought before the court. So here order him to furnish security for appearances. If he is not appearing personally, then the authority will ask or direct the police officers to arrest the person and bring before the persons, and a minimum fine penalty may be imposed on the person for not coming. This is the two ways of procuring the attendance of witnesses. One is according to the CPC, a summons or notice is sent. If you fail to come before the authority or to the revenue court voluntarily, then bailable arrest will be ordered by the authority, and the persons arrested and brought before the court, and a nominal or minimum fine will be imposed on the person for non-attending the cases. Section 33 speaks about formal enquiry. So in this formal enquiry, when the persons, after receiving the summons or notice, if he comes before the revenue court, then the formal enquiry will be conducted by the court officer, the authority. Here it's not lower than the Tahsildar office and above the Tahsildar office, like Assistant Commissioner and District Commissioner. Here, as the state language which is prescribed by the government, in that language they have to record the enquiry or evidence which is done with the particular person, or it may be used even in English language also, but preferably the state language, or here we use Kannada as a state language, so in Kannada language the evidence should be recorded. So after recording this evidence, the deposition should be signed by the person who gives the evidence. In subsection 2 of section 33, if the person is a physically disabled person and on behalf of that person another person is giving the evidence or is attending the enquiry, then that should be, after recording, it should be read over to the person in presence of that person. Then the superintendents has to direct to sign the record. Means here the person is not able to see, physically disabled, so under such circumstances the other person can be attend the enquiry on behalf of this person. After recording all these things, that has to be read over to the witness, then the officer may ask the person to sign. So in that way he has to sign, and if he is not able to sign, his left hand thumb mark has to be affixed, that is certified that yes, this is the evidence given by the person. And after that the document, the deposition has to be signed even by the authority also, that it become a certified that it is the dictation given by the officer of the evidence which is given by the person. So this is called the formal enquiry. Section 34 speaks about summary enquiry. So in the summary enquiry is prescribed for determination of any question by or under the act for any law for the time being in force. So in this summary enquiry, this is prescribed by any law for the time being. So it will be written in his own handwriting, either in Kannada or in English, or the language which is used in particular village or taluk, and as declared by the state government. So whatever the evidence that is given by the person, a minute of the proceedings containing the material evidence shall be recorded by the authority, and the person has to be signed. The person who gave the evidence should be signed, and also the officer also sign that this is the evidence collected by the person, and it is also applicable to a formal enquiry. Section 35 speaks about formal and summary enquiry to be deemed judicial proceedings. So here a formal or a summary enquiry under this act shall be deemed to be a judicial proceedings. So here the CPC has to be applicable in the summary enquiry or a formal enquiry. So the authority has to follow the judicial proceedings, the way how the court conduct the procedures to collect the evidence and dispose the case. The same thing should be applicable even in this revenue courts also. Like the persons who comes before the revenue court to give the evidence, they have to take oath or swearing in the name of God. Then whatever the question put by the authority, they are supposed to answer for that questions. Then that should be recorded either in English or in the regional language. Then the deposition should be signed by the deponent. Deponent means here the person who gives the evidence, and also the enquiring authority, that is not lower than the Tahsildar. So they have to put the signature and seal of the office. So like this, the judicial proceedings has to be followed while conducting any enquiries into the revenue courts. Section 36 speaks about hearing and decisions to be in public and after notice. So here, just like all other courts, even in the revenue court also, either the formal inquiry or the summary inquiry will be conducted, and after that recognized agent or the parties for that particular dispute are supposed to be attend the inquiry, and they have to answer for all the questions put by the authority, and it should be signed by the parties and even by the authority. So after the final hearing of that particular dispute, the authority has to pass a judgment or decision in that particular case, and while passing the judgment or the decision in that particular case, that has to be informed to the recognized agents or to the parties, and the decision should be put on the notice board so each and every person can come to know. So it should be open to the public, and it should be notified to all the parties to the particular dispute. They should be notified that what is the decision taken in that particular case. Next, section 37, enquiries other than formal or summary. So here, this is the two enquiries which is recognized by this revenue courts. One is formal inquiry and the other one is summary inquiry. So while conducting this, so the execution authority or executive authority has his lawful duties. To perform the lawful duties, he may use the general or a special power which is given by the government to the authority, and apart from this general and special power, the discretionary power of the officers will be used in the circumstances to make the work or the decision in a smoother way for the furtherance of public goods. In certain circumstances, we cannot go as per the laws which is prescribed. So under such circumstances or the extraordinary circumstances where the existing law cannot be applicable as it is for the time being, under such circumstances the officer can use his discretionary powers. Discretionary power means the officer can think beyond the law what is the good for the public, and that he can do or he can apply in the motion for the good of public or for the safety of the public. This is the things which is used or conducted by the authority, that is other than the formal and special inquiries. Next, section 38 speaks about power to enter upon any land or premises for the purpose of measurement, etc. So here section 38 speaks about the power to enter upon any land or premises for the purpose of measurement, etc. So here once the land become a disputed land between the authority and the parties, under such circumstances the officers, the authority government officers can inspect the boundaries to make the measurement of boundaries, or to check the soil, or to check classification of soil, or any other assessment which is relating to the dispute. They have to visit the field, so they can go to the land and they can remeasure the boundaries, and they can fix the boundary marks, and even they can bore the land, or they can test the soil, and whatever the other necessary things that has to be executed in the ground or in the land, that can be done by the authority. And even the officers or the workmen who goes according to the directions given by the authority or the government, even that workmen or the other persons also having the right to enter the premises, and as per the direction given by the government or the authority, they have to enforce the work for the time being where the property is situated within the government, that particular state government. So here it can be done in the public premises, but where the premises or the disputed place is a dwelling house or any building which is occupied by a private persons. Under such circumstances, not less than 7 days a notice should be given to the person or to the occupier or to the owner of the building that a survey has to be done with the existing building, and they can after that notice period, that is 7 days, they can go visit and they can do the necessary work that is directed by the government. Even under some circumstances, the social places or the religion sentiments or religious place or even other places also can be checked by the persons for the above said purposes. Section 39, manner of evicting any person. So here section 39 speaks about manner of evicting any person wrongfully in possession of land. Here the Deputy Commissioner may or shall evict any person wrongfully in possession of land or any other places. So here the properties belongs to the government or any authority. In that particular place, a wrongfully person or group of persons are living in that place. So those persons can be evicted by the order given by the district commissioner. So here a notice will be issued to the person to vacate the notice. If the persons are refusing or if they are not obeyed that notice, so deputing the subordinate officers to remove any person who refused to vacate the place. Here if after giving the notice, if the persons are not vacating or not going to be vacate the such place, then the officer can give a direction to the authority. So to the subordinate officer, the persons can be vacated from that particular punishment. Here under such circumstances, they can use the police force to evict the persons from the place, and even some penalty can be imposed on the persons as a kind of punishment. So that is imposed upon the persons who is not ready to vacate the places or premises. So this is the overall thing relating to the Karnataka Land Revenue Act, that is the procedure of the revenue officers under section 24 to 39. Topic: Karnataka Revenue Appellate Tribunal. Here this is the constitution and power of the Karnataka Revenue Appellate Tribunal is created under the Karnataka Revenue Appellate Tribunal Act 1957. So under this, it is an appellate tribunal, and as we discussed in the previous classes, that from Tahsildar office to the District Commissioner office, they are having the tribunals, that is quasi judiciary court, and here from those tribunal we can make an appeal to this Karnataka Revenue Appellate Tribunal. This is created under the Act, Karnataka Revenue Appellate Tribunal Act 1957. So here section 40 speaks about constitution of the Revenue Appellate Tribunal. So here the Revenue Appellate Tribunal is constituted under the Act 1957, and here under this constitution of Revenue Appellate Tribunal, there is 6 members in the committee. The one is chairman. Chairman is always a regional commissioner. He should be chairman for the particular appellate tribunal, and 3 members, totally 5 members, 1 chairman and 5 members. Among the 5, 3 members should be district judges, either retired or existing, and the remaining 2 members, the Deputy Commissioner of Revenue Officer. So all the 6 together constitute the appellate tribunal, that is 1 chairman and 5 members. The chairman should be a regional commissioner, the qualification, and remaining 5 members, among them 3 should be the district judge, and other 2 members should be the deputy commissioner in the revenue office. So this is the constitution of the revenue appellate tribunal. So here the chairman should be the rank of regional commissioner, and 5 members among 3 should be the district judges, and other 2 should be having the experience in administration of revenue and not below the rank of deputy commissioners. And here the number of the members of the tribunal should be increased as per the requirement, and if the cases are more, and the number of tribunals and the members may be increased according to the time being, and it should be notified in the official gazette, and the person should have the qualification to become the member of the appellate tribunal. And the Karnataka Revenue Appellate Tribunal constituted under Karnataka Revenue Appellate Tribunal Act 1957 and Karnataka Act 24 of 1957. So this is the constitution of the Revenue Appellate Tribunal. So here there should be 6 members, 1 should be the chairman, and among the remaining 5 members, 3 should be the district judge and 2 should be the deputy commissioners of the revenue office. This is the constitution of Karnataka Revenue Appellate Tribunal. Here conduct of business of the tribunal means it is the powers and functions of the tribunal. So here section 41 speaks about conduct of business of the tribunal. So here under subsection 1, the tribunal can handle all the matters relating to appeals, revision and other proceedings shall be excised by a bench of 2 members. So here according to section 41 subsection 1, the power of the tribunal in all the matters relating to appeals, revisions and other proceedings shall be excised by a bench of 2 members. A bench of 2 members means here, as we discussed in the previous topic, that the constitution of the appellate tribunal, there will be a chairman and other 5 members, but usually the regular tribunal will sit as 2 members as a appellate tribunal, and among the 2 members, 1 will be the judge and 1 will be the experienced revenue department officer. So here to deal the matters or the disputes relating to appeals, revision and other proceedings. So here appeals means it is the appeal made by the lower tribunal. The lower tribunal, as we discussed in the previous classes, that the tribunals, that is from Tahsildar, Assistant Commissioner and District Commissioner or collectors. From these tribunals they can make an appeal where a appealable provision lies in the provisions according to the dispute. And revisions, a dispute is come before the authority and it is already decided, but either party is not satisfied with the decision given by the tribunal, so they want to review the tribunal, the appellate tribunal, the same existing matter, so they can come for revisional also. And other proceedings which is prescribed by the act shall be excised, means shall be dealt with 2 members. So here the 2 members, that is, as I told, 1 district judge and 1 experienced revenue officers. Here the chairman of the tribunal directs that bench shall consist of 2 members or a full bench not less than 3 members. So here where the dispute come before the tribunal, that is appellate tribunal, where according to the nature of the tribunal and according to the number of the tribunal, the chairman will decide how many members should sit in the appellate tribunal. Usually there will be 2 members sitting in the tribunals. 1 member is the district judge, the other member is the experienced revenue officer. So Here usually they sit as a 2 members in the appellate tribunal, and in some circumstances as the chairman thinks fit, so they can sit as a full bench also. In the full bench it is not less than 3 members. Maximum they can even sit 6 members also, and the minimum is that 3 members should sit, that is chairman and other 2 members. One should be the district judge and the other one should be the experienced revenue officer. So here either 2 members bench or the full bench. If it is a full bench, it is not less than 3 members, or according to the circumstances the chairman can increase the number of members. Maximum they can sit as a 6 members also in some important disputes. So here every bench shall consist a district judge and a experienced revenue officer. So here while making or creating the benches, it is very important that every bench there shall be a district judge and another officer having experience in administration of revenue matters. So here one district judge and one revenue officer who is having more experience in the field should sit as a judge. So this is the power and functions of the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal. So they can deal with the appeal, revision and other proceedings, and the chairman will decides how many members should sit in the tribunal, usually 2 members, and if he thinks fit that should be a full bench, then not less than 3 members can sit. And in every sittings the member should be, one should be a district judge and the other should be a experienced revenue officers. So here section 40 subsection 1 speaks about a single member of the tribunal may exercise the power of the tribunal. Here under some circumstances even a single member can sit as a judge to the appellate tribunal. The single member will be a district judge. When he sits as a single member in the tribunal, the following matters can be deal with the single member. So the first one here, section 40 subsection 1 class 1, that is admission of an appeal or revision petition. So here appeal or an revision petition can be admitted by the single member. Means when an appeal is filed from the lower tribunal to the appellate tribunal, or a revision petition is filed before the appellate tribunal, when the parties and the advocate comes before the tribunal, and after hearing the dispute and loss into the particular dispute, that is a question of law and question of facts, based on that the single member can accept or admit the case in the appellate tribunal. That is called admission of appeal or revision petition. The class 2 speaks about admission of any appeal or revision petition presented after the expiry period allowed by the law. So here, as we know, for filing of all the petitions or cases, there is a limitation act. According to the limitation act, the party should file the appeal or revision or reference petition, whatever is suitable to the particular dispute. So here, when the expiry date, that is the suit is barred by the limitation, means the limitation period is over. Imagine, for example, if 30 days is the limitation from the date of the lower court order or the lower tribunal order, from the date of passing the order, within 30 days they have to make an appeal or any other petition which is required in that particular dispute. So if the person failed to file a petition or an appeal within the time limit, such petitions or even appeal can be admitted by the single judge after hearing the dispute. If the judge come to know or if he is satisfied the genuine reason given by the appellant in that petition, and for the delay in filing the appeal, that can be condoned by the single member judge and that can be admitted. This is also one of the power of the single member judge. The class 3, stay orders pending disposal of any appeal, revision, reference or other proceedings. So even the single member can deal with the stay orders pending disposal of an appeal, revision, reference or other proceedings. So here stay order means the stay order is granted by the tribunal or by the appellate tribunal. Such cases or disputes also can be dealt with the single member. Here stay order can be given in a few ways, like till further orders or status quo, that is maintain as it is, or till the disposal of the case. Like 3 types of stay order can be given. The one is till further order the stay is given, or stay is given till the final disposal of the case, or the judge may grant status quo means maintain as it is. So like this, a stay order is given in the pending disposal of the appeal, means the appeal is pending. In the appeal there is a stay order. So such case also can be dealt with a single member, and along with this revision petitions, reference petitions and any other proceedings also can be handled by the single member. Then class 4, any matter of an interlocutory character in appeals, revision, reference and other proceedings. So here interlocutory character in appeals. Interlocutory character means an interlocutory application can be filed in between the case anytime before the judgment. So that is called interim application. Interim application means the parties, either party of the suit needs some relief from the appellate tribunal, and for that relief he cannot wait till the final order is passed by the appellate tribunal. Under such circumstances, an interim application can be made by either of the party, and based on that, after hearing the application and objection, even the single member judge can pass an order based on the application, and that order is called as interim order or IO, interim order. So like this, if a interlocutory character is there in the appeal, even that can also be heard by the single member judge, and also revision, references and other any proceedings. So he is able to and is given the power to handle interlocutory character in appeals also. And the above powers is given to the single member of the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal, and a person, a aggrieved person brings an appeal before the single member bench of the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal, and the appeal petition, if it is rejected by the single member tribunal, that petition can be brought before the 2 bench members or more than 2 number of members, and that can be disposed by the majority opinion of the members. Section 42 speaks about sittings of the tribunal. So sittings of the tribunal means where the tribunal situates or where the office is situated. Usually the headquarters of the tribunal, that is appellate tribunal, shall be at Bangalore. So in the capital city of the Karnataka, Bangalore, the headquarters of the tribunal will be situated, and it is existing in Bangalore. And the benches of the tribunal may from time to time, and subject to such conditions, have sittings at such place as the chairman specify. Here, the headquarters of the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal is in Bangalore, and as it is the capital city of Karnataka, so the headquarters is in Bangalore. And according to the other benches of the tribunals, from time to time and subject to such conditions as may be prescribed, have sittings at such places as the chairman of the tribunal may specify. Here, the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal, according to the number of cases increased, so they may increase the number of tribunals also, and if more number of cases is there in any other districts of Karnataka, even under such circumstances the chairman may specify by establishing some tribunals, appellate tribunals in the district also, or even the district tribunal, number of district tribunals may be increased along with the principal appeal tribunal also. So here, according to the specification given by the chairman, they can increase or decrease the number of this appellate tribunals, and even in such places as they think fit in other places than Bangalore also they can establish the tribunal. The discretionary power is given to the chairman to think and do. So section 43 speaks about powers of the tribunal, that is appeals, reference and revision for the time being. So this Karnataka Appellate Tribunal is having the power to deal with the appeals. Appeals means that is the case brought from the lower tribunal to the appellate tribunal, and the reference and revision are it's already done with the case, and again they want the either party of the case wants certain clarification with the order passed in the lower court, so they can apply for the reference or revision. So this is the three power given to the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal to deal for the time being. It may be changed or it may be increased or decreased as per the government thinks fit. Here section 44 speaks about power of review. So which case can be reviewed by the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal? So here there are two ways of reviewing the matter or the dispute. One is on its own motion. The Appellate Tribunal itself can file a revision petition to review the existing case, or on the application of any party affected. So here under two circumstances the review can be done. One is the Appellate Tribunal itself can file a review petition, that is called on its own motion, or any party of the dispute was affected by the decision given by the lower tribunal, he can make a review. And the other reasons for the review is the discovery of any new and important matter. So at the time of the dispute is pending before the lower tribunal, they are not able to discover the new and important matter that supports the dispute of either party to the case. So now they got such important matter, so that has to be submitted to the court. As already the lower court procedure is over, so they can file for the review, and now they can produce the discovered document to the court. And the next thing, evidence which was not within the knowledge of the party. Evidence which was not within the knowledge of the party means here the party doesn't know the fact which is now come to know. As I told in the previous point, discover of new and important things, where the fact which is not known by the person, now we come to know that there is certain evidence which supports his case to prove and to get the justice from the court. Under such circumstances, he can approach the appellate tribunal for the review petition. And the next thing, any mistake or error apparent on the face of the record. So here the mistake is clearly appear on the face of the record. Under such circumstances, the party can make an review petition before the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal, and provided further that no order shall be varied or reversed unless notice has been given to the parties affected. So here, where the review petition is filed before the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal without giving a notice to the other party, they should not take any decision. So here there will be two parties to the dispute. So one party is filed a review petition before the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal, then the other party should be notified through summons or notice. Then the person should come before the court, and then after hearing both the sides, they should pass an order, and based on only one person, no order shall be made, and no order affecting any question of right between the private persons shall be reviewed except on the application of the party affected. So here, if the dispute is between two private parties, then such petition should be reviewed only if the affected party come before the appellate tribunal by filing a review petition. Other circumstances, on its own motion, it should not be done. And every application under subsection 1 for a review of the order shall be made within a period of 90 days from the date of the order. So from the date of the lower tribunal order, within 90 days, this appellate tribunal has to make an order. And the provisions of sections 4, 5 and 12 of the Limitation Act 1963 shall apply to an application for review under this section, as the Limitation Act specify the limitation. So here in the appellate tribunal, while a review petition is filed, it should be bound by the Limitation Act. So within the limitation period, the affected party should come and approach the court. So section 45 speaks about finality of the orders of the tribunal. So here, once the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal makes an order according to section 44, that every order of the tribunal shall be final and no further called in question in any court, means where the appellate tribunal gives a decision, and that should not be, or that cannot be challenged in any court hall. Whatever the order given by the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal, that becomes final, and after that the parties cannot go and approach any other civil and other courts. So here it becomes the final. The parties once approach the tribunal, then they makes an appeal to the appellate tribunal, either as an appeal or a revision or a review. The order will be final. Further, they cannot go any regular court and they cannot challenge in the regular court. So it becomes final for that particular dispute. Section 46 speaks about power of the tribunal to call for returns, etc. So here the tribunal is having power to call back or call returns of the authorities to subject to its jurisdiction. Under some circumstances, as we discussed, according to the place and the nature of dispute, the tribunals may establish as per the directions of the chairman. So here, based on the subject and jurisdiction, the dispute should be authorized to that particular tribunal, the particular appellate tribunal. Here, by mistake, or if it is transferred to some other subject jurisdiction, then the appellate tribunal is having the power to call back the subject or the jurisdiction of the dispute, and again that should be transferred to the exact subject and jurisdiction tribunal, and issue general directions and prescribed forms for regulating the practice and proceedings of such authorities. So if the authorities misused the power or misbehaved with the parties, or if some cases happened, then a regulating form should be given to the person to make the proceedings of such authority in the tribunal. And section 47 speaks about proceedings of tribunal to be judicial proceedings, means the proceedings, that is the trial which is done in the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal, that should be judicial ones, means it should follow the judiciary procedures to deal with the cases. Here the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal should follow the procedures according to IPC, CRPC and CPC. So these three laws should be followed while giving a judgment or while conducting evidence or any proceedings in the appellate tribunal. And section 48, power to make regulations. So here to power to make regulations means after previous publications and within the previous sanction of the state government can make any regulation consisting with the provisions of the act. So here the state government may create a new regulations to the appellate tribunals in how to dispose the cases and other proceedings and procedures that should be followed, and they can enact the new laws by replacing the existing law, or they can make amendments into the existing laws which is relevant to the appellate tribunal. And once the new things has been changed by the existing law, the state government should publish the things regulations into the official gazette, and that should be followed by the Karnataka Appellate Tribunal. This is the overall thing regarding the Karnataka Revenue Appellate Tribunal. Any doubts? Thank you.